Hey, what's up, guys? This is Said, and yeah, as you can see, I'm just recovering from IGN convention. But enough about me. Today, I'm having one of our special guests, Troy Baker, with me. Hello, Troy.
Pleasure to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm doing the same thing. We're both recovering from a great weekend, right?
Exactly. Now, you've been here in the Middle East twice now for IGN convention.
Second time.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about it.
I'm loving it. It's been such a I hate to be cliche, but it's like an eye-opening experience. I had no idea what to expect.
Did you have fun engaging with the crowd?
Absolutely, and that's been probably the best. I think it's the greatest natural resource that the Middle East has is its people.
Oh yes, and I think we brought you in Dubai for like in the best time in the season ever. Like it's not too hot, not too cold, so yeah, I think you're enjoying the weather as well.
Especially like we were there last night. We got to do a little concert thing, and there was like this. It's the perfect backdrop of like all the boats in the marina were back behind us and everything. It was this light breeze that was blowing. It was beautiful.
Yeah. True. Now, as we all know, like, let's say just about this year, you had like almost 14 games coming out with you being a major part of it. Okay.
Okay.
I would love to name them all, but I'm going to shed a quick light on Call of Duty, Advanced Warfare.
Sure, yeah.
I would love to get your input about the overall experience, you working with Kevin Spacey.
Oh, yeah.
Since I'm a huge fan of Kevin Spacey.
So am I.
Yeah.
Well, what's so funny about that, I've been with the Call of Duty franchise, pretty much since the beginning, and I go back like even to Medal of Honor before it was Call of Duty, and it became Call of Duty. And the first time I was actually in a Call of Duty game, it was Modern Warfare 2. So it's been like 6 years ago now, something like 7 years ago. And so, I've gone from like Soldier A and yelling grenade and get down and RPG. I've been that guy, and we've all kind of, bled for that game in one way or another. And then when I found out that they were doing a bit more of a cinematic, and especially for Call of Duty being a first-person shooter, it's been one thing that telling a story has been really hard for them, because one of the really important parts of telling a story is how you use cameras to tell the story.
Sure.
And so for them to actually change up their process and kind of even tap into the DNA of what a Call of Duty game is, and really find out what cinematically, narratively, and systemically makes that a Call of Duty game, and be able to change things around that, I think was really interesting to me.
Sure.
So I didn't even know when I was going in that Mitchell was going to be the player character. It was just one of the other characters that we were all going in to meet about.
And which did you decide to use your face as Mitchell as well? I
found out after the fact, because again, we just kind of all went in, and I think actually went for it was Nox, or I think it became Joker later on was the character name.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a couple of different people that were like, they're not sure if we want to use you as this or this, and the characters kind of changed a little bit. And then I actually came into it almost not halfway through, but they had done a lot of stuff before me, because you never really see Mitchell. Mm-hmm. It's really, honestly, I've got to give huge props to Gideon Emery, because you always see Gideon, and Gideon Emery plays Gideon in the game, which is great. But like Gideon Emery, Russell Richards, those guys did such an amazing job. And when I was on set filming, they kept talking about when Kevin gets here.
True.
And I finally put my hand up, and I was like, I'm sorry, Kevin who? And they all just looked at me like, oh, that's right, he doesn't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, so your father figure, the character Jonathan Irons, will be played by Kevin Spacey. I went, oh, wow, how weird is that the guy has the same name as like Kevin Spacey? That must be kind of a rough life for him. Like, no, we got Kevin Spacey. And I almost fell out of my chair. So yeah, Kevin showed up, and the Call of Duty has been no stranger to having celebrity, or A-list people on there. You obviously had Sam Worthington that was in Black Ops. Gary Oldman was in Black Ops as well, and we've had a fair share of celebrities that have been in one form or another of a Call of Duty game, or even like in commercials. There were huge commercials like Jonah Hill and everybody else. That's the celebrity that I chose to pick out of the commercials, not anybody else but Jonah Hill. But we weren't sure what to expect, and the character was so true to like the character that he plays on House of Cards, which after talking to him, he's like, that's really, to me, it's Richard III is Frank Underwood. So I wasn't sure what to expect, and then it's such a ridiculous process that we go through, because especially for a film actor or a stage actor like Kevin is. He's used to wearing maybe an interesting wardrobe or having interesting makeup, but this is just incredibly revealing. It's spandex, with motion capture suit with the little balls over everything, and then also 64 dots on your face and a camera literally right here. So it can be a little off-putting for a lot of actors to come in who aren't familiar with that. It's even still weird for me, but you get used to it. And then Kevin comes in and really, I mean, the guy brought his A game, and he was interested in the character, he was interested in the story, he was interested in the process, he was completely down for everything. There was no diva quality about him at all. It was amazing. It was a really cool experience.
That's fantastic. Now, not that we're complaining.
Sure.
Okay. But since you had like almost 14 games coming out this year with you being a big part of it, don't you think that sometimes maybe some of your major fans might get fatigued with your voice? Or
Oh yeah, that's a huge challenge. You don't want to work yourself out of a job. And we never know a lot of times when these games are going to come out, especially when we start.
Okay.
You can kind of guess on average it's like an 18 to 24 month dev cycle. That if you start something a year and a half, 2 years later, that's when the game's going to come out.
Sure.
But then you look at something like The Last of Us or BioShock Infinite, where it was 2.5 years of just production, 5 years of development, or 4 years of development. So you can't really gauge. And so when we start a project and it either pushes, or like in the case of Shadow of Mordor, it pulls and actually comes out earlier, you don't know. So all you know is that you got another job, and as an actor, that's a win.
Okay.
We have had to start kind of getting a little more creative and cautious about which jobs we take, and making sure that we're not doing, you don't want, as we saw like with Nathan Drake. Nathan Drake became a very prominent character type. It wasn't, Nolan North wasn't in every game. Nate Drake was in every game, because they wanted the dashing, adventurous, charming, witty, protagonist. And we're starting to see that model kind of shake up a little bit in games. But you want to make sure that you're not doing Joel in every game or Booker in every game, that you're kind of changing it up, which is why we did stuff like Joker.
Sure.
Yeah.
So now another question, like for all the fans out there that hoping to be like as famous and good and talented as you are in voice acting,
or better, please.
Now, what do you think, or what advice can you give them for them to maintain your voice? Or actually, let me ask you this: how do you keep maintaining this gorgeous voice of yours? And
what's so funny is that it's D. Bradley Baker, who's an amazing actor, and Frank Welker has been. There was Mel Blanc, who was the man of 1,000 voices. Then you had Frank Welker, who's done everything from Scooby-Doo to Abu on Aladdin. And D. Bradley Baker is equally talented. He can just do anything with his voice. If you're familiar with Ben 10, he's the alien on every episode of Ben 10. He's Klaus on American Dad. I mean, he's an incredibly talented guy. And he just put out an article on Twitter. It's like, what does it take to be a voice actor? And he was like, first of all, let's strip away the word voice. It's just about being an actor. Fundamentally, it's an actor. So, I can. My friend Fred Tatasciore has got a slew of herbs and tonics and stuff that he carries with him into his session, because he's the voice of the Hulk, and he screams so much, and he screams so well, and he does monster sounds and everything. So there's things that you have to do to just make sure the standard stuff: getting a lot of sleep, drinking lots of water, not being an idiot and going to a pep rally or whatever before and screaming. But that's because everything you're going to do in your job typically is going to be very taxing from a vocal standpoint. But really, it's just about being an actor. It's what I would encourage anybody to do is you have to study. I hate saying this because it sounds so pretentious, but the craft of acting. Because it doesn't matter if you have the coolest voice in the world, if you don't know how to interpret that script and that story into a character and bring it to life, sometimes using just your voice, then that voice doesn't matter. You really, I don't have the coolest voice necessarily. I don't have that announcery thing, which was the coolest voice before, whatever. You really have to be able to understand how that character relates to you, how you relate to it, finding something honest, keeping it grounded, being able to tell a story, make choices, all those things. And those have absolutely nothing to do with the voice. So I would always encourage someone to really study acting and really devote yourself to that process, and then let the voice thing come.
Yeah, which comes to my next question. During one of the panels that we had at IGN convention, you mentioned that sometimes you get to the studio, do your character, and just leave, and then you will, when the game comes out, you just see the overall product. So how sometimes you interact with the character, make it your own, when you don't get to have the full experience of interacting with all the character that's in the game?
It's theater of the mind. especially with games going more and more performance capture, it's just like shooting a TV show or just like shooting a film. You show up on a set, you get into your ridiculous wardrobe and your props and everything, and you are having to imagine. A lot of times the developers are really great to provide, character models, environment models, being able to show you, so this is the house. Like when we were doing The Last of Us, we got to see what the ranch house looked like. We got to see what like Philadelphia looked like, and
so that you can live the experience to the fullest.
You can at least put your mind there, But at the end of the day, just like as anything, we're all pretending. And it doesn't matter if you're doing TV, film, video game, theater, whatever. You have to pretend, and that's what this whole thing is. It's like playing make believe. So the beauty of it is comparing the two visions, like the one that I have in my mind when we're doing it versus the one that actually ends up on that disc.
And also the one that the director had, because I remember in the video of making The Last of Us, you said that the first scene when Sarah dies, you had to do it like 4 or 5 times until the director had to get you out of the image that you had in your head. Exactly. I remember that video.
It was... I had that whole thing mapped out in my head, and I love Neil Druckmann so much for teaching me a very valuable lesson of getting past myself, and it was really, really cool. And that was a very, very challenging day as an actor, and it was a challenging day as just as a person of learning how to break down that ego and listen to, Joel to me is a real character, and he's a real person rather than just a character. So what I was trying to do is show people what Troy Baker looked like in that scene as opposed to what was happening with Joel. And when we came back to Joel, that's I think we actually saw what Joel was going through.
Now, as we all know, Joel and Ellie had like a balanced role in The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question to you is, do you think that the females are getting the right characters and right roles in each game?
I think that we're starting to see that. I definitely think that what Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley and everyone at Naughty Dog did, specifically with Ellie, was a benchmark for what the female role looks like inside of the game space. And that was absolutely hand in hand with what Ashley Johnson did. I think that it was a beautifully asexist, if I can use that term, way to present a character, because the reason why it had to be a girl was because it was relevant to that specific story. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a conceit about it that said, we're going to do something really cool with a girl.
Or it has to be a girl.
It has to be a girl. It was just, it so happened to be a girl. Mm-hmm. And I think what especially what Ashley did, and the fact that, she won a BAFTA for it, and which was a huge thing, and especially who she was nominated up against was huge. And I think that what that demonstrated was not just we put a girl in a great role, but the attention to the writing and the crafting of a character was what was so important. So what I want to see is just more complex characters come to life. It doesn't matter if it's a guy or a girl, as long as it's the right character. The last thing that I want to see is something skewed to a place where it's like, well, we have to put a girl in here so that we're relevant. And then you still end up writing a bad character. Mm-hmm. Write a good character, and then let that character speak to you in the story as far as what gender they should be. That should be the last thing that we're thinking about. It should just be a natural, organic process that you come up with.
True. Now, let's put voice acting aside of it.
Okay.
You're a man of many talents.
Okay.
And recently you had your first album, Setting on Fire.
Yeah, man.
Tell us more about it.
Well, it's been a huge labor of love for me. And the fact that, we spent about 2 years making this album.
Okay.
And we had an idea because a lot of the albums that have meant the most to me, were not recorded in a traditional sense. They weren't done in a conventional studio. They were done somewhere outside of that. One of the most influential was Bruce Springsteen did a tribute album for Pete Seeger in a cabin. And so I got this harebrained idea that I wanted to do this album in a cabin. So we found this cabin up in the mountains of Big Bear, California, and we drugged about $500,000 worth of gear and all the band. And with the hope that it would work. We didn't know if it would work or not. Okay. And it did. And, we tracked the album in about 5-6 days, and we did overdubs for the next year and a half and mixed it over the next, 6 months. Okay. And we finally came out with it, and it's an album. There's a lot of CDs that come out with a collection of songs, but this is the entire idea of it was to create something like you would find on a 33, like on vinyl. There's a side A and there's a side B, and there's a journey that you go through on this thing. Not to sound too pretentious, but it's that was the way that when I was growing up we listened to music. It wasn't like, you know, here's a single, here's a single, here's a single, but it's like, here's a song that's buried. You know, I didn't know what the second side of U2's Joshua Tree sounded like for like 2 years, because I spent so much time listening to the first side of it. So that's that was kind of the whole idea of it, and it's been really cool to sit back and watch people's response to it, and which song, you know, resonates the most with them, and the songs I think are going to be really big, you know, aren't. It's like people find their own little nuggets. So yeah, I'm really proud of it.
But did you have the passion of always being a singer, or always had to like?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I was a musician before I was an actor, and I just kind of stumbled into both. You know, I had zero athletic ability, you know, so I had to find one way to get checks. So you know, I gravitated first towards music, and it came naturally to me. Like my best friend Travis Willingham, anything with the ball, he can, you know, just be an ace at. It doesn't matter, baseball, basketball, football, it doesn't matter if it's sport. He's got a proclivity towards that, and he's amazing. That wasn't me. That wasn't my gig. Mine was, you know, I could pick up an instrument and not master it, but I could play it. So music just kind of has always been with me, and I think that kind of informs a little bit acting, because there's a lyrical quality and there's a melody to dialogue and to, you know, telling a story. It's all performance based. So the door of acting was one that opened up to me, and I was brave enough to walk through it. But it's also kind of afforded me the opportunity to kind of come back to my first love, which is music.
And did you have any kind of singer or someone who inspired you to be?
Oh yeah, man, I've got, you know, Jeff Buckley is a huge influence on me. Bono, of course, from U2. So yeah, and I think you kind of naturally, it's like finding a character. You know, you kind of pull from different elements. You know, there's a little bit of Bowie in me. There's a little bit of Michael Hutchence from NXS in me. So it's kind of I'm an amalgamation of all those kind of things.
All right, since we're talking about your talents, now rumor has it, you know, the Last of Us movies. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I can't imagine Joel without you being the main actor for it.
Okay.
Because I played the game more than once, and your voice is attached to my head with the name Joel. Right?
Okay.
So, but if you had a chance, like, let's say the director came up to you and like, okay, Troy, I'm giving you the option of choosing an actor, because if you looked at the fans, they're saying Hugh Jackman might be a good fit.
Sure.
But in your opinion, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's very kind, and I'm grateful that what I did helped with that experience for you. That means a lot to me. It really does. You know, from the very onset of this, Josh Brolin is someone who, if I had to tangibly put Joel to life to an existing person, that would be kind of my most linear go-to. It's weird because it's like, you know, Joel is Joel to me, and he kind of exists outside of me or really anybody else. He's a real person. But, you know, practically speaking, to actually cast that role into a movie, I honestly, I completely default to Neil in that and the people that are heading that up, because I really do feel that they'll make the right choice. They're not going to they would much rather find an unknown than a known for any of the roles. If it's the right character, I mean, look at me. Okay. They could have cast, honestly, anybody in that role if they wanted to, and they chose me, some unknown kid at that point. True. So I trust their judgment in that, and all I really care about is that it's the right person for the right role. And honestly, either way that it goes, I win, because if it's, you know, Hugh Jackman or Josh Brolin or, you know, Matthew McConaughey, whoever, if they do honor to the character, then I get to see something new about Joel that I never knew about, because they're going to show me a side of that character that I wasn't familiar with, that I couldn't do. If they suck, then I get to be so far the best performance, I guess, is Joel, but which is terrible. But I think that, you know, the desire of any creator is to create something that is perennial and that lasts outside of what they've created to open yourself. I mean, look at, you know, Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and now George R.R. Martin, to create something that can be put in the hands of other people that have allowed this to grow into something. So I always say that we never fully own a role. We're just merely custodians of it for a while. So I would hope that any of those characters from The Last of Us would be bigger than just one performance, but that they could be a character that could live on beyond us.
All right, since we're running out of time, I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Now, aside from The Last of Us movies, you had 2 movies. You acted in 2 movies, which you admit at some point that you weren't really satisfied with them.
They were not Oscar winners.
Okay, they were not Oscar winners. Let's just settle at that. But my question is, since you knew that they weren't that good, why did you settle for having them? Since you mentioned before that sometimes you need to do some stuff for the check.
Well, yeah, I mean, as David Milch, the creator of Deadwood, has a wonderful phrase that says the exigencies of the artist situation are always of the financial. You know, you want to find a way to monetize your passion. And, you know, especially starting off, you know, you should take every job you can get, just because you're going to learn what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you need to work on, and you just get experience under your belt. You know, that was my acting class, was just doing all jobs, some great, some terrible, didn't matter. And they're fun experiences. Making any kind of movie, you can always kind of glean some joy from that. And even on those terrible movies, you know, I made wonderful friendships through that. We had a great time. It was 18 night shoots out of 20, I think, shoot days, or 16 nights out of 18 days, something like that. So, you know, everyone's loopy. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're drinking copious amounts of coffee to stay awake, you know, and you're making a really bad, you know, late night action movie. It's terrible. But I can't remember the actor that put this out, but he wrote a book called The Dailies Are Great, which means that everybody always shoots a better movie than what they think they're making, typically in the end of a movie that's terrible. It looks great when you're making, you're like, oh my God, guys, this thing is going to win the Golden Globe, it's going to win the Oscar. But, you know, you never really know. So the reason why I did it was because it was an opportunity, you know, and you only hindsight can tell you if that was a smart decision or not.
All right. Well, I'm really sad that this has to come to an end. I really don't want this to end. But we have to wrap this up. So thank you so much, Troy, for being with us.
Thank you for having me, man. Great conversation.
I would love to see you more in the Middle East.
I would love to be here as well.
And thank you guys for watching us. And for more over interviews like with Troy Baker and other celebrities that you might like, keep it locked to IGN.